Hi, welcome to Mac's channel. So today we are doing a unboxing review backslash have a look and say my positives and negatives regarding the Acer Nitro 5. So as you can imagine, it's a typical black box with many stickers on it depending on who you get it delivered by. Now obviously I have run this laptop, so I have opened it and I have run it, and obviously I wouldn't do a review just with basic information of open it up. Here you are, it's great. There's positives, negatives, and a couple other negatives and positives. Anyway, going on to the model which I got, which is important because it seems to be not entirely common. And when I say that is, you know, you go on Google and you look up this particular model. I'll go on to that one in detail. So it's running with the Intel i5-83H, 8300H. This 15.6 inch screen, which is pretty much common across the board, with 144 Hertz. More than 144 Hertz second. And this is the part which gets complicated. This one here has the GTX 1060 with 6GB RAM. There's either the 16650 ties and stuff like that. The GTX 1060, however, doesn't seem to be particularly common, and the only one I found was in a language that I'm not quite sure what it was in. But anyway, 8GB RAM. It does that in two 4GB modules, which is great because it means it runs in dual channel speed. But it's bad because to upgrade to more memory, you need to bin the entire set. It runs with an Intel 512GB NVMe quick. When I say quick, it's quick. I mean, its starting up speed is just ludicrous. Even more so when you uninstall Norton, well, as you know. The typical Wi-Fi, it has a HD camera on it. HD. Chances are it's just 720p, you know, the kind of thing that's maybe alright to talk to your gran on Skype. Or in a little box, if you're doing something like that. A 4-cell lithium battery. To point out the battery, if you really run it on energy saver, 3 hours on a really good day. If you're playing games on it, an hour. The battery is small, but admittedly, if you open it up, you understand why. They literally have squeezed a lot of tech in here. The only part of the tech they haven't squeezed in enough of, I'll come on more onto that one. So, typical laptop box. If you've ever opened up the laptop box, you'll find your laptop inside a sleeve bag thingy-majig. So they'll have one over the keyboard to protect that, and use in packaging form this squishy styrofoamy stuff, which is all fine and fantastic. Amongst that, it is a cardboard box that has your power supply in, and the power brick itself is, well, how do you describe it? So, brick size, about 12 centimeters as a hunch. It's slim, I'll give it that. The cable that goes to the laptop itself is, well, long enough. It has a Velcro strip on it. For specifications, if you really want to know, it's usable between 100 and 240 volts by 2.34 amps being the power drain. But what it kicks out is 19.5 volt by 9.23 amps. So nearly 10 amps this thing kicks out. And if you're wondering about the end of it, it has the red one. For those who know what I mean, it has the red one. Because this thing likes its red features. And before you ask, it has the 3 chrony things. Not a typical PC power supply cable. It's the one which is 3 knobbly. If you get what I mean with knobbly. Inside the box itself, besides the power supply, it's actually quite sparse. It comes out with this piece of paper that comes in many languages. In fact, what the heck is it? I didn't even bother reading it. It needs to be plugged in. First time setup takes 30 minutes. Fascinating. Basically, if you've ever owned a Windows machine and you know you need to start it up first time round doing these particular settings from Windows 10, you know what I mean? That's what it basically tells you. It forewarns you. Setup guide. Getting started with Windows 10. How to turn it on? Well, I'll point that one out in a minute. Oh, what language is this? Alright, okay. How to use wireless. Basically speaking, if you're buying a machine like this to play gaming, chances are you know all this stuff already. If you're buying this thing just to do Skype calls, you've got more money than sense. Easy way of putting it. Next one, what is this about? Quick guide, software installation. Oh yeah, it tells you the locations of everything. Fascinating. Screen. I don't understand why they need to point out where the screen is. Ooh, what's that? Oh yeah, I might as well point out the features. Now, if you wonder why I picked this model is, I originally, and I have been for many years, an Acer fan, whichever way you want to pronounce it. And I still got my old Republic of Gamers laptop from them, except for GTX 260, which is basically really old, is no use anymore. I have had a couple other ones in between, but it's not been particularly great, and I finally decided to get a proper new laptop for gaming. And I originally was going to go for that 505 series, which is great, but all its I/O is on one side, and there's no USB-C on it. There's no card reader on it. It has two USB 2s and USB 3, whereas this has, besides the Kensington lock, an Ethernet, a USB-C port, a HDMI port, USB over charging, by the way. It has an SD card reader. It has USB 3 ports, and I'll get to the locations of it. Headphone jack, power indicators, DC in, and all that little bits. Battery reset pinhole. Yes, it does have a pinhole for resetting the battery. Bit of a worrying thought. Declaration of blah-de-blahs. Shortcut combination buttons. And all the other little pieces of information that we quite frankly don't need. So, buy with that. So, my laptop obviously came with that 512GB Intel NVMe. So, I'll just start with the quick bottom view. Bottom view. Here is the RAM compartment. One screw, pull it out, get to the RAM sticks. Easy peasy. This compartment here is where the hard drive goes to. Standard 2.4-inch drive, which is fantastic because you got both memory assortments to pick from. And in my particular case, I just shoved an SSD, a 2TB solid state drive, nice and cheap. It would do the job, and things still quite quiet. More on the noise and quietness in a minute. So, as you can see, plenty of ventilation behind it. This side we have got SD card reader, USB 3, HDMI, USB-C, and you can probably tell by the noise, a compact Ethernet jack, Kensington lock. On the back we have ventilation holes, and then we have pretend ventilation holes. And when I was saying they could have done with more, the cooling of the processor and the graphic card is by 2 fans, but on one cooling block. So your graphic card and processor is cooled by the same block, but with 2 fans. So instead of having one fan for the graphic card and one fan for the processor, both are done by the one, which means if one warms up, the other one warms up too. And in this particular case, the Intel i5-83H runs the warm one. Strange enough, the graphic card holds rather well. It's the processor which suffers a little bit. So, obviously, ventilation that actually does something, ventilation that is pretend. Something they could have done with not doing. Other side, we have 2 USB 2 ports, headphone, and your power in. And you have 2 indicators, charging or happens to be somewhat running, which it is. On the top, we have a carbon fiber look. It is Acer, quite minimalistic, and the Nitro with a little I would call it burgundy colour. It's not red, it's kind of burgundy. Burgundy? Burgundy? Front, we have got something that does something, something that doesn't do anything. I don't think it's the speaker ports. No, they're not the speaker ports, which makes absolutely no sense. They have that there and that there. That isn't the speaker hole. But what it is that and that right underneath it. Now, if you're asking about how does it sound, you know, with the feature of the cooling not being great, headphones is one of those things I'd recommend to buy. Speakers, no. They're usable, don't get me wrong, they're usable, they're just not great. So, you open up the laptop and you come to the usual screen thing. Bing. Right, so your sticker there, 144 Hz. And I tell you what, as a laptop screen goes, it's really nice. Let's do viewing angle. And viewing angle. Viewing angle. As you can tell, it does quite well. I probably, with it being on battery mode, I'm pretty sure the brightness isn't going to be fully up. It does get quite bright to do the job. Trackpad, red area here. It doesn't highlight exactly where the left or right is. You roughly do the guesswork. Typical two stickers, NVIDIA and the Intel one, and other funny things that quite literally can be pulled off. You know what I find as a laughing joke? It says Dolby Audio on it, with two downward speakers. Okay, sure, whatever. So as you can see, screen, microphone, and the webcam up here, which they got the web camera centralized in it, which is positive. The trackpad, however, is not centralized. But interesting one. The keyboard is lit, but it's only lit in one color, red, which I can deal with. It's better than none. Lit up. Your power button, by the way, is right up here, right there. Your power button's there. It looks like a standard normal key. You would never know. The touch of them is quite good. Oh, as another highlight, your WASD have a red thing around them to make them different looking than all the other ones. It's the idea of gaming. So, going into Windows. How would I describe the keys? Bit mushy. Now, if you're German, no, I did not mean mushy. Fingerprints. Yeah, there's a bit of a fingerprint going on, depending on if you got greasy hands or not. But, as such, while this thing's not doing heavy load, it is nice. Now, I'm going to reverse it to the microphone, which by the way is a shotgun one. You tell me if you can hear that fan at the moment. Chances are, you can't. When this thing is not doing anything, she's quiet. Right. Not an antivirus. Depending on if you're worried or if you intend to go to dodgy websites. Uninstall it if you don't intend to do that. Other piece of base software that installs is NitroSense. I'll show this in. Turn that on right now. Which is a piece of Acer software. So currently, the CPU and GPU require 0 RPM. Great, yeah, I know. When it's not doing anything. And it holds on idle, when it's not doing anything, around about 30 and 32 degrees. Yeah, discrete GPU's idle. Now, this is an important piece of information to remember. A lot of people have complained that this laptop is jerky and doesn't do particularly well. This piece of software here is actually quite important. Setting up the thing is quite important. Because if you don't pay attention what GPU you're running from, you might be running from the Intel integrated one instead of the discrete one. The discrete one only runs if it's absolutely necessary or if you haven't set your power plan properly. Make sure you set your power plan properly. Because it will then decide not to run your main GPU to save battery, and it runs on Intel one, which is logical because the Intel little graphic chip thing is great to do YouTube and stuff like that, but it's not much good for gaming. I apologise, a lot of light going on there. It is a matte screen, by the way. It's using quite a powerful light here. My biggest gripe is obviously the one thing which I have mentioned, and that is the cooling. At the moment, she's quiet. She doesn't make a noise. No RPM turn. However, shall we load something up? Shall we just load up the menu of a Tomb Raider game? Yeah, sure. Why not? Do I have you? No, actually. How about Far Cry 5? So, my personal way to fix most of the GPU heat and stuff like that, and I will point out the trackpad warms up a fair bit, and I'll explain why. Some ingenious thought that, you know, the main processor and that is in this section of the laptop here, where the WASD keys are. So that's fantastic, but obviously the cooling's over here. It would have been better off with the cooling being on the other side, so your fingers don't end up red hot over here. And you had fans underneath that would keep it cool. My personal way of fixing some of the thermal trouble happens to be is you go into NVIDIA website to download the driver adjuster. What you do is you fix a frame rate onto it, 60 frames per second. You don't need a 144 Hz screen, if I'm quite frankly honest. It's just pointless because it's just not got screen tears, no nothing. It's a great screen on it. That's a bonus behind it. What the frame rate limiter does is, instead of the GPU going, let's make shed loads of frames, and same yet again for the processors, it takes a bit of the strain off. And with that, what do you call it? It just simply doesn't allow the GPU or the CPU to run too hot with most games. That's my preferred way of sorting it. I mean, I've seen people on YouTube adjusting the BIOS, which I will point out. Acer, if you happen to be watching this, instead of people having to do it via some software in Windows to adjust the processor settings, please just do a tiny little section in the BIOS where you can adjust it. I seem to have this locked on 30 frames for some strange reason. Why? Oh, yes. You know when I was talking about make sure you have the power plant settings done properly? The Intel graphic chip is currently doing 30 frames per second, which amazingly must be really good. It's not using the discrete chip. It's currently using an Intel one, and it can run Far Cry 5 at 30 frames per second. I will have to plug this in, just so I don't need to mess around with settings. Because, trust me, it will run pretty much every game nearly on 60 frames per second with no problems. You put a frame limiter on, it's happy and it will just do it. Yes, if you're trying to start thinking about that with Wilson when I'm saying just do it. No, it's not like that. But yeah, the power plant is one of those things that needs setting up properly. Easiest way to do it is plug it in and just go high performance. Because the problem is the battery is not powerful enough to do the humongous drain that this thing can actually do. Right, okay. It's plugged in and now it's gone, ooh, more power. It's done a Jeremy Clarkson. Power! Oh yeah, to the noise, you can probably just hear the fan noise right now. And yes, lo and behold, locked onto 60 frames per second, and it's working rather well. It does a 1 frame drop, but it does that because of the GPU driver being locked to 60 frames per second. And at current moment in time, even so the GPU is not too high, it's Around about 60 degrees for the GPU, about 45 for the main processor, and locked pretty much at 60 frames per second. But you can just hear how the fan's ramping up a bit. Admittedly, it doesn't sound incredibly bad, the speakers, but like I say, once this thing starts really heating up, I'd recommend headphones. But like I say, if you got the frame rate fixed for 60 frames per second on every game, it will just lower down how much the GPU is really trying to push to get beyond. Obviously, certain games will still strain it, and when it reaches that 80 degrees on the GPU, it then starts sounding like a little hairdryer. That is probably the one thing behind it. Don't get me wrong, you could, without a problem, just leave the frame limiter off and let it do all the frames that you actually want to do it. But for 144 Hz, it's going to be pushing to get to that frame rate. I mean, it's only a GTX 1060, which is not exactly new. It's not a Ti version. So you're better off just having stable frame rate, 60 frames, and then having lower temps across the board, whichever game you decide to play. So whether it's Far Cry 5 and pretty much high detail, or if you try playing a strategy game. I mean, as such, it's great. Processor itself is, well, I can't really complain about it. It's a great processor. If you're talking about benchmarking in it and doing view editing on it, it'd be perfectly fine. I mean, Intel NVMe is definitely fast enough for it. The processor's fast enough for it. Like I say, temperature-wise, if Acer had built two separate cooling systems for it, so both of them wouldn't have to rely on the same one, it would have been even better, because it would have just, not been as bad. Or depending on processor, have one with more cooling ability. Like in this case, it's the processor. Most of the time, most of the heat is the processor. I would have thought it would have been a GPU, but it's not. As such, I would say if you can get on a big discount, and I got it for about £300-400 cheaper on that day for a short time period, it's definitely worth it. Full price? The cooling is a bit of a letdown. But as such, as a whole laptop package, I'll admit that this laptop is really good. Speakers a bit meh. Down facing speakers. I don't know why they couldn't have just had it front facing. Like where those little grill things were at the front. That would have made it slightly better, so it's not just, I mean, if you got it on your lap, chances are you're going to be partly covering up the speakers. Screen's great, nothing to complain there. The build itself is alright. The fact that it's not RGB keyboard, I can deal with. Yeah, there's not much I can complain about besides the cooling. Either they need to give more BIOS options, or like I say, overhaul the cooling a little bit for the processor. The Intel 5, I'd hate to have one of the i7s because that'd probably be even worse. Yeah, that is it for that laptop. It's a great laptop. It's good for the price if you can get it cheaper. It's definitely good for games. The I/O port selection is definitely better than what the Acer's one is. So I must admit, Acer has done a good job here with the ports, the ability, the graphics, and everything else behind it. It's just that they need to work on the cooling just a little bit more. But if you can deal with locking frame rates, or if you really want to fancy tinkering around with the software to drop the CPU core speeds and undervolting it in this particular case. A lot of people have undervolted it successfully. Sure enough, do that. As such, as a laptop goes, it's great. I can't really complain too much about it. So yes, thank you for putting up with this ever so slightly longer video. I hope you do like it. If you did, please do give a thumbs up, like, subscribe. I do videos here and there and everywhere. Occasionally with like a couple of weeks in between them. Sometimes one or two in a week or something like that. So yeah, I will probably do a follow-up review on other little bits regarding this laptop, but I think with a 25 odd minute video review on it, I think that should answer most of people's questions regarding this laptop. Oh yeah, if you're wondering, you're looking on 60 frames per second. Do I get any screen tearing? No. Like I say, 144Hz screen on this is probably great if you really use it, but it's not really necessary. Not really. No screen tearing. It's just quite handy like that. So yes, I'd like to say thank you very much for watching, and I shall catch you next time. Cheerio.